The Uganda we want. So mu Uganda gye twagala mu lutalo luno olw'okulwanyisa obulabbayo obukenuzi nze kyempita obuvundu. Munna Uganda alina okuba nga yeenyigiramu.
Ffenna twenyigire mu lutalo.
Ate abalala tebasomye kuzimba wabula bayize okuzimba.
Uganda gye twagala okulaba ng'enguudo zonna nkole nungi, public transport nga weeri.
Kati eno gavumenti eriwo erina akabonero ka Lucifer. Buli kyotunulako mu Uganda kiriko oxygen. Either babika amawulire malungi oba mawulire mabi. Minisita teyeetagisa kabangali budde buno zaki.
At this time, why should somebody import furniture from outside Uganda? Let us leave NRM to be in charge for another 36 years or more.
I really want to see a Uganda that believes in the rule of law. If you have a constitution in place, follow it to the letter. Don't change laws just because you want them to favor you.
Kuba njagala omanye nti obugagga bwonna Uganda bwe yeeyagaliramu buyita waffe ku ttaka lyaffe. Naye busoga mugidibaze.
How can a referral hospital refer you to a private clinic? The Uganda we want buli muntu ateekwa okumanya nti I am a stakeholder, nkwatibwako si kwesuulirayo gwa naggamba.
Uganda oyinza okukakana nga mwe mulina ba graduates aba university nga bangi okusinga Ebungereza. Mwe mufokasinga nnyo ku degree. Eri bo bafokasinga nnyo nti byensomye mbijeemu omulimu n'enkola.
We are dreaming of a Uganda where at a young age there is such a relationship between parent and son, parent and daughter, where the daughter can say this is what I want.
Uganda gye twagala empya tesobola kubeerawo nga tewali mateeka. Amateeka agakola.
The Uganda we want. Welcome to the program, The Uganda We Want. And this is part 2 with Dr. Ezra Suruma. He's airing out his views on the kind of Uganda that he wants to see. Let us hear from him, and I want you to join me and welcome him in this second episode of The Uganda We Want, and we hear more from him. My name is Mlanzi, and let's welcome Dr. Ezra Suruma. Doctor, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Well, Professor, after hearing from you and after hearing about who is Dr. Ezra Suruma, the question that comes to my mind, when you went to the university in America, what you studied is so much in line with the economy. You as well came back to Uganda, you taught, you've served, and still everything, just a bit of politics and leadership, but majorly you've been so much into the economic journey or line in your leadership. Someone who is watching us and someone who is listening to your voice today would like to hear from you. Which kind of Uganda do you envision? Because you were born before independence, you've lived in the times of independence, and we still have you. But is this the country that you really envision? If not, which kind of Uganda do you want to see?
That's a very, very important question. I like to approach that matter from a historical standpoint. I think it's important for all of us to recognize that Uganda was created by the British Empire or British colonists. They are the ones who said Uganda should be combined with Ankole, with Bunyoro, with Toro, with the West Nile, with the Choli, with Lango, with the Teso, with Karamoja, and so on, and they become one country, which they called Uganda. When they came, these various parts were independent kingdoms. Now they, with their power, they put it all together and made us one country. So it's very important for us to know where we have come from. Because if you don't know where you've come from, it may be difficult for you to know who you are. So this is who we are. Of course, it's important also to recognize that we were neighbors anyway. The Langis and the Acholis and the Baganda and the Banyoro and so on, we are all in this region together. We are neighbors. We are not one under one king. We are under different kings, authorities, but in the same area. So the British said, now you are all one country. On what basis? On the basis of British force and power. And they started to give us their language, put one police. They had district commissioners who were usually white, controlling the districts. At that time, when we got independence, there were only 17 districts. And usually, in fact, always, the district commissioners were white. The ones, they were British, ruling the country. So now, this is what we have inherited. This is our inheritance. And the question now is, what do we do with this inheritance? Does this constitution, physical constitution of the various tribes and kingdoms, can we live together peacefully? To me, that is the first prerequisite for any other activity, to find a formula for coexisting peacefully. Because we still recognize that there is Buganda, that there is Ankole, that there is Lango.
There's Acholi.
There is Acholi. And indeed, you know, for 20 years, the Acholi attempting to either secede or take over power. So this kind of war is what we want to avoid. And of course, opposite of war is peace. And how do we coexist peacefully? I think this is perhaps the problem we were attempting to solve when we formed the Uganda Patriotic Movement in 1980. We wanted all to come together and rule together. And I believe that we have examples of other countries like Nigeria, where they have a north and a south that are very, very distinct. And they have resolved that they alternate presidents so that the south takes over for a period, then the north takes over for a period. So that way they share power. And I believe that in Uganda, we need to have a similar formula of sharing power, of sharing economic wealth and incomes, and sharing infrastructure, making sure that all the people of Uganda feel that they are equally privileged as citizens. That irrespective of where you are from, you have equal citizenship, and equal access to what the country offers. And I believe that if we can manage to do that, that will help us to live peacefully. And indeed, you can see that whereas between 1962 and 1985, there was a tremendous upheaval, fighting. But since then, then we had, of course, the civil war with the North. Started in 1986 and ended in 2006, 20 years. And now the challenge I believe we have is to make sure that we are satisfied that our constitution allows equal access by all tribes, by all religions, by all peoples to what we call Uganda. Access to education, access to business, access to opportunities, including power. Because if there is inclusiveness and fairness, then I believe that people will be happy with being Ugandans. So once peace is, because whatever progress we have enjoyed is because there has been relative peace in the last, since NRM took over. Although there was war with the North, of course devastated the North, but the rest of Uganda continued relatively unaffected. But now as we watch our neighbors in Congo, in Sudan, Southern Sudan, and even Northern Sudan now, Somalia and so on, we see that the possibility of conflict is always facing us. And we want to make sure that this does not happen. Because when it does, it devastates us, and nothing else can be achieved if we don't have peace. I believe that another fundamental problem we are facing now is the problem of unemployment, among the young people especially. And we need to solve this problem. We need to put all our people to work so that they have income and they can enjoy a reasonably good standard of living. That's very, very important. When we don't solve that problem, it creates opportunities for chaos, for war, for conflict in the future.
Yes, Doctor, I'm tempted to ask, especially on the first point, the one you talked about of peace. How can we achieve that? Of course, you try to talk about the constitution should try to come in, but is that really enough, Doctor, just to go through the constitution to make sure that we can coexist, that we can live peacefully? Isn't there something else that has to be done? And if possible, by who? Probably that can as well put more light on what you're saying, especially on peace, before we go on the second point.
Yeah, it's a very complicated question. The struggle for peace, it has never been simple. And NRM had to go to the bush and fight for 5 years in order to achieve, to remove the regime which had grabbed power in 1980. Now, when there is, when people are aggrieved, they try to find a solution. That solution may be through political organization, or it may be through military organization. If there is a possibility of changing power through political organization, through political parties, through political rearrangement, then of course that means peaceful change can occur. And that would be the best. Because we are attempting to practice what we call democracy. It's not easy, it's hard. But what that really implies is that we are hoping that through the constitution we have made, that people can come together, form a party, contest for power, and if they can convince the majority of the people to vote for them, then they can take over power and rule the country. And that opportunity is always open. But that's, of course, a theory. The practice is different. The practice of democracy is hard. Even Americans, I find, who are we consider to be the leaders or founders of democracy, modern democracy, are having difficulty in convincing their people that the elections are free and fair. Mr. Trump has been saying that the elections in 2020 were not fair.
And even up to now, he still stands to that.
He still stands on that. So you can imagine if a country like America, with all the electronics and technologies they have, cannot agree that the election has been done fairly, with all the judicial systems they have and whatnot, there's still a substantial part of the population which believes that the election was stolen. Then out about us, we have a big burden to prove or to organize elections which people will say, yes, this election was free and it was fair. And this is a heavy, heavy burden. Because so long as people are not trusting the system, they will have cause to fight. They will have cause to disagree and maybe resort to war because they are not convinced that the
election was free and
power
fair.
has been gone in fairly. And that's a fundamental problem we face. We need to find a way of convincing ourselves that our mechanism for election is free and fair. You can see what is happening in Congo, in the DRC. They are fighting over whether the elections have been free and fair. The moment somebody loses, he says the elections are not free and fair. When he wins, the elections are free and fair. When he loses, they are not free and fair. So what should we do?
Yeah, and that is to everyone who contests for power.
Yes.
Yeah.
When they lose, they say the elections are not fair. And we have to, so there are some underlying deficiencies in democratic processes which we need to resolve. When we started with the lining up, people would line behind the candidate of their choice. There everybody could see, you have 10, I have 20, everyone can see. But of course the problem there was, it's supposed to be secret ballot. You're not supposed to know who has voted for you and who has voted against you. Because when you do, then you start punishing them or hating them and so on, because they didn't vote for you. So that, because of the inability to count votes and whatnot and organize, it seemed to work. But I remember even in one of the primary elections of NRM, it became very, very complicated and didn't seem to work very well. But this is a problem we must resolve. We must restore faith in the democratic process. If we fail, the alternative is war.
So, Dr. how can we restore the faith in the democratic process? And who should do that?
We have to find the most modern methods of registration, of counting, of openness, so that all participants in the process can see and we can prove and we can show that this is how people voted, these are people who are registered, this is the evidence. If need be, we can go to court and show the evidence of how people voted, and remove those who doubt, remove their credibility.
So, Doctor, what you're saying, that it is actually possible to do that.
Yes, I believe
it's just that we may be not intentionally looking at that as a strong point and something that we need to work on. But you're saying it is possible.
I believe it's possible.
People to see.
There are countries like, I've not had Germany, for example, complaining about its fairness of the voting system. I've not heard it. I've not heard it in Sweden. I've not heard it in Norway. You understand me?
How are they doing it?
How are they doing it? We should be able to learn from them. They have opposition parties, but I have not heard anybody complaining that the system was not free and fair. So I believe it is possible. And we need to take the time and the resources and invest in a system. Of course, there is a possibility that those who fear that a free system will not benefit them may oppose it. But in the end, it's only such a system that can assure that we have peace.
Yeah.
As long as people don't trust the system,
there will be instabilities.
There will be, in the long run, there will be a problem.
So, Doctor, should we say that currently our independent electoral commission has not done its best, has betrayed Ugandans when it comes to elections?
I would not use such a strong language, but I would say that they have a long way to go to persuade the whole country that the systems they are using are indeed free and fair, and the system should be auditable.
Oh, auditable.
We should be able to go and audit. Independent parties should be able to go in and see and audit and even test. If they say that Suruma, you voted for so and so, according to the results on record, can they come and check with me and say, is it true that you voted for so? And I say, yes, it is true. Then I say, oh, so the system seems to be okay. We can do a sampling and see how people voted and
Oh, so when we talk about a secret ballot, it should, I want to understand from you, are we saying that it should be secret to the public, not seeing whom you have voted for, but if it narrows down to an individual to really know that you voted for this person, the organization, the organ that is helping us to organize the election should be able to prove that no, Mulanzi, you voted for Dr. Suruma on president, and here is the proof. Is it what you're trying to?
I'm saying that there should be an opportunity to audit, to test whether what the results we have are indeed in agreement with what people did. And that would be the only way. If there was a way to go back and check, is it this one record here says that Mulanzi voted for so-and-so. Is it true? And you say, yes, it is true. Or no, it is not so. If you say no, then say there is a problem with the system. And we need to improve this.
How about the people, the leaders that we elect, Doctor? What is your view, now especially to me, the Ugandan, who goes into the ballot? What is your view on who should we vote?
Well, it's very important to remember that the people we vote are part of us. They are from our community. They are from our village, from our district. They are part of us. I remember reading an article in the New York Times many years ago, and the writer said that the government cannot be better than the people it is leading, because the government is from the people. So we, the members of parliament, the president, they are part of us. We are only electing them to take on certain responsibilities on our behalf at a certain time in history. But they are not different from us. And maybe that's why democracy wants a change to occur, so that we will try this group, then next time we'll try a different set, and so on, so that all of us have an opportunity to serve and show what we can do. for our people. But let's not think that the leaders are different from us. They are not different. They are the same. The Suruma you see here in my private life is the same Suruma with the Minister of Finance. Yes.
So we need to think in line that when I elect someone, he's just coming, he's part of, part of me.
Yes.
He's just been given an opportunity by my vote to go and represent me.
Yes, and serve you.
The challenge we have, Doctor, is when we do that, we go through that process, it turns out in the opposite way. Instead of them serving us, they don't serve us. Where does that come from, and how can we deal with that problem according to your experience in leadership?
It's an extremely difficult question or matter. You and I, as human beings, have self-centeredness as opposed to love.
In Ruchiga, how do they say self-centeredness? Normally, when someone is self-centered, thinking about himself or herself.
Kutafaha abantu. Okutafaha abantu. Ruchiga is very strong. Okufaha abantu, it means you die. You die for them. Literally, kufa. Kufaha abantu, care about. In English, it will be translated caring about others. But in our language, it is literally meaning dying for others, which is what love is. In Christianity, we say God so loved the world that he gave his only child. Christ loved us so much that he died for us. Love and sacrifice go together. But what I'm saying is that a human being, when you are growing up as a child, you think that the world is about you. That's a child. But a grown person knows that he has a family, knows that he has brothers and sisters, and has parents, and has neighbors. He's not alone. It's not all about him. There's a man called Rick Warren. He wrote a book, A Purpose-Driven Life. And the first sentence in that book, which I have never forgotten, it is not about you.
Yeah, he says so. It's not about you.
It's not about you. Because most of us think it's about me. The whole world is about me, for me. So eating for me, drinking for me, dressing for me. No.
The my dominates. The my in the I dominates.
And that's why in commandments, which God gave Moses to give to his people, he said the first commandment is love God. You're not here for yourself. You are here for God. It's in fact God who has put you here. So you know kumanya, ane akuteka wano. Why are you here? Are you here to eat and dress? Or is there some bigger purpose for being in the world? Unfortunately, many of our people are behaving as if they are in the world to eat, to have a big house, to have a big car, to marry many wives. That's the purpose for being in the world. And that's the number one problem we face: self-centeredness, selfishness. So when you get into, I remember when I became Minister of Finance, one prominent businessman said, now this is your chance to eat.
Yes.
If you don't become rich now, you'll never become rich.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I just kept quiet. Because that had never entered my head that the purpose of my being in Minister of Finance is to enrich myself.
Oh, mu Buganda balina enjogera gye bagereesa akuwa obwami aba akuwadde kulya.
Really? You are there to serve. It's a public
It's contrary
office.
to what you're saying.
It's a public office. You are there to serve. But the whole approach to life is love God is number one commandment. Love your neighbor as you love yourself is the second commandment. And Jesus Christ said, these are the fundamental basis of all the teaching.
Loving God
and loving your neighbor.
And loving your neighbor as you love yourself.
As you love yourself. If we obey these two commandments, believe me, the world will be a different place. And we would be happier. Because the opposite of this is war.
Yeah, because if
you
I
don't care
love
about your neighbor, instead you want to take even what he has, even the little he has, you want to take it away. Because if I'm a member of parliament and I'm getting 30 million a month, and now I even want to get the little land that somebody has in my village and what, I'm looking for war. Soon they will have nothing. Or if want to take more of their taxes for my own self, instead of using those taxes to help them, I want them for myself. So impoverishing those who already have nothing. So we need, first and foremost, is the quality of the human being that we are. The moral and ethical content of each person is very, very important. Then, after that, then of course, there is the law. We have a law which is supposed to promote justice, but the law has to be supported by the morality of the people.
Because you can make
if everybody's breaking the law, I'd say on the streets, when you go on the road, everybody's breaking the law. You're supposed to drive on the left, people are driving on the right. People are overtaking, but they are not supposed to overtake. Then, if everybody's doing that, how do you even enforce the law?
Yeah.
So the moral content of society has to be the basis for a peaceful and progressive country. That's where we start. We start with the individual. And of course, this comes to how are you brought up in your family? What values are being given to you? What are you being told? And do you have a family? Some of our children are growing without families. Or their relatives are mistreating them and beating them and starving them. They are lucky to be alive, so once they get a chance, they also do the same.
Because that's what they learn.
Because that's what they are experiencing.
Yeah.
So we have these really important, and then of course you would say, does society itself care? If I'm an orphan, does society offer me any help? If we are living in a humane society, there will be some arrangements to support the orphans, support the disabled, support the aged who are no longer able to help themselves. I'm glad that we are now talking about social protection. We are giving a little bit of money for those who are over 80 years old. It's a start. But we need to do much, much more to help our people, because now when I'm getting help from the community, I also care for the community. I feel the sense of love that the community is giving me, and I want to give back. That we call gratitude. But if what I'm getting is beating from society, then I also want to fight back. And then we have disintegration. We have corruption. Corruption simply means You only care about yourself and to hell with the rest of the society.
Say that statement again, Doctor, for us.
Corruption means, oh, it's all about myself. To hell with the rest of the society. I don't care. All I care for is
me.
Myself. Yeah. And that is brings disaster. That's what we are staring at in our world. And as long as we don't have a greater moral character as a country, and since we say we are a Christian country, for example, and maybe 80 or 90% of the country is Christian, then these fundamental morals are the basis of existence. Here, it wouldn't matter whether I'm a Uganda, whether I'm a Mcholi. If we are all agree that loving God and loving one another is the number one and number two rules of existence, then it doesn't matter which color I am, which language I am. The point is that we are all human beings.
Yeah, because even the God you talked about, he said, he was very clear, love yo. This yo is not saying you the Muganda, you the Mcholi, you the, he says, love your neighbor.
Your neighbor. The Mcholi is your neighbor. The Muganda is your neighbor. The Mutoro is your neighbor. So that's where we are.
Yeah, because Doctor, as you said, now you've brought in this issue of morality. And now if our morals, if we are immoral, let me hope it's not a very tough word to use, but if we are immoral, if some of us are immoral, it's going to be hard for us to have moral leaders, moral servants.
Because at one time or another, we ourselves are the leaders.
So if you are electing immoral leaders from immoral population, it's going to be hard for you to have a moral country. And what you're saying is we need to have a moral country. And just, Doctor, if you can help us again and say, okay, when we want to instill good morals in people, this one should do this and this should do this. Who are those people who are supposed to do that so that we have a country that is morally upright?
Yes, it starts with the family.
Family.
The family is the number one because the parents are the first ones we hear. They're the first people we see as babies, as children. And so our first consciousness or knowledge is what we see and hear from the people who are bringing us up. The love that we experience from them is our first knowledge of how to conduct ourselves responsibly and carefully or caring. Or we copy what we see. And so that's I call it the family institution. The family institution is probably the most important foundation of human conduct that we face throughout the world. Because by the time you leave your family to go out to face the community, the neighborhood, the outer world, you have language, you have feelings, you have attitudes formed as a result of what you have been experiencing. Then from the family institution, you face the educational institution, if you are lucky. The educational institution, maybe even the church institution, maybe the parents take the child to church and the child hears and sees how people are behaving, how they treat each other, how they give somebody as an elderly, you say get up so that he can sit down. You don't say, hey, cousins, today.
Abakadde bebamanyi bayingi balaga.
No, so you are learning these things as you are growing up, in at home, in school. In school, you are learning to obey your teachers. When they say do this, you do it.
Yeah.
When they say stand, you stand. So when they give you homework, you do it. You don't say, no. You are giving instruction, you learn to obey, obedience. In society, we have law. We are supposed to obey the law. But where do we start in learning to obey the law? We start from what we are learning in school, that there are certain rules which you have to follow. You have to come at a certain time. You have to go in class at a certain hour and get out at a certain time, come back at a certain hour. You're supposed to sit like this. You're supposed to dress like this. So these are the institutions. And the church also is fundamental in telling us how we are supposed to obey God, how we are supposed to behave, how we are not supposed to cheat or steal, and so on. Then, as I said, there is the legal institutions, the judiciary and the law. This also has its role, of course, because we have to follow the rules of the country, and so on. So these various institutions together, if they are working well, would lead us to be what we should be. But if I go to class and the teacher is not there, and tomorrow I come and the teacher is not there, now I no longer, when I go, I don't even reach school. I just go and play football.
Because you know the teacher is not there.
Because the teacher is not there. Why should I go there? And then before I know it, I don't know anything. Because I haven't learned anything. And your name comes and I fail. Why did you fail? Because you never went to school and the teacher was never teaching. When I was in Prime Minister's office, we did a study of primary school UPE performance from 2007, 2015. And during that period, we found that on average, about half the students could not read or write after 6 years of education.
What?
And we said, how could this be?
6 years of education?
6 years of education, and you can't pass a literacy test. Only half the students, sometimes only 42% would pass. In some years, only 40% pass the literacy test and the numeracy test.
And the root cause is?
There are many root causes. Teacher absenteeism was one of them.
Teacher is not there.
Teacher is not there. 40% of the time, teacher would not be there. 60% of the time, the head teacher would not be there. So the children also just go playing.
Yeah.
I remember the president quoting in one of his guidelines of 2016, a child went to ask him, I think it was in one of his homes, the child went to ask him for school fees. And the president said, but there is a free education here in UP, in the school. And the child said, abana nibasiba nibazana.
Basibe yonga bazanyi.
The children, they just spend their days playing. They are not studying. So, as I said, when I was in Prime Minister's office, we started a program to ensure that we record daily attendance of teachers. We even put biometric machines, so that when you come, you put your thumb on the machine to show that you have come.
I think that happened to some schools, not all schools.
We already did it in 20 districts.
In 20 districts,
in the East. Both for health workers and for UPE teachers. And we had hoped this was supposed to be a beginning so that the program could be taken to the whole country. And it was beginning to have impact. And I wish that it could have been continued because it's very, very important. that we stop teacher absenteeism and health work absenteeism, and in other areas. There also absenteeism in so many other areas. People get salary, but they don't work.
Yeah, because doctor, you imagine, think about this. You have a teacher who has been absent in a classroom. Now he comes out of the teaching profession. He comes to ask you for votes. And because you've known him as a teacher, he comes to parliament to represent you. How would you be sure he will even be attending the plenary meeting?
Yeah, he come and sign the book and then go away.
Because he has got a tactic. He knows how to do it.
Many of the teachers we found were riding border. They come, they sign in, and then they go to run border to get extra income.
Yeah.
But, so you need, of course, the moral conviction of each person that I am supposed to do what I'm being paid for. But you also need systems, regulations, and systems to enforce what people are supposed to do according to the law.
With moral enforcers.
The two have to, one is not enough. Say that, Suruma is a good guy, he'll work. No, that is not enough.
Yeah.
You need the enforcement.
You need more Suruma'S.
You need the enforcement systems to ensure that people are doing what they are supposed to do. That's what regulations are for. That's what inspectors are for. Would find that in primary schools, when an inspector comes to inspect the school, when he goes, people say, okay, chichuede, taja komao, tarina mafuta. He doesn't have fuel to return. So from now onwards, we don't have to work because we know once the inspector has come here in one term, he can't come twice.
Because he doesn't have fuel.
He doesn't have fuel.
We are safe, we can do whatever we want to do.
Now we are safe, we can do whatever we want to do. So those are some of the problems we have to confront in terms of management. Management is important. So when I'm hiring you as my worker, yes, of course I'm interested in your character, but I also have to reinforce my systems for management to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. I say that and I completely agree with you. As a country, Ugandans, you're hearing from Dr. Ezra Suruma, his perspective on the kind of Uganda that he would really love to see. We've talked about a number of things from our first point that we are talking about peace. And of course, when all that, I believe, Doctor, when all that is being worked on, we will live in a peaceful country. Well, Doctor, I think we have to keep it right here. We will add more in episode 3. We promise we'll be having you in episode 3. Let's keep it right here. And my fellow Ugandans, you've heard it from Dr. Ezra Suruma. And my question and my plea to you is, how are you going to respond to ensure that we all achieve the kind of Uganda that we envision, that you and I envision? Let's go into the next program. My name is Mlans Robert with the Uganda we want. Bye-bye. The Uganda we want. So mu Uganda gye twagala mu lutalo luno olw'okulwanyisa obulabbayo obukenuzi nze kyempita obuvundu. Munna Uganda alina okuba nga yeenyigiramu.
Ffenna twenyigire mu lutalo.
Ate abalala tebasomye kuzimba wabula bayize okuzimba.
Uganda gye twagala okulaba ng'enguudo zonna nkole nungi, public transport nga weeri.
Kati eno gavumenti eriwo erina akabonero ka Lucifer. buli kyotunulako mu Uganda kiriko oxygen. Either babika amawulire malungi oba mawulire mabi. Minisita teyeetagisa kabangali budde buno zaki.
At this time, why should somebody import furniture from outside Uganda? Let us leave NRM to be in charge for another 36 years or more.
I really want to see a Uganda that believes in the rule of law. If you have a constitution in place, follow it to the letter. Don't change laws just because you want them to favor you.
Kuba njagala omanye nti obugagga bwonna Uganda bwe yeeyagaliramu buyita waffe ku ttaka lyaffe. Naye Busoga mugidibaze.
How can a referral hospital refer you to a private clinic? The Uganda we want buli muntu ateekwa okumanya nti I am a stakeholder, nkwatibwako si kwesuulirayo gwa naggamba.
Uganda oyinza okukakana nga mwe muyina bagraduates aba university nga bangi okusinga ebungereza. Mwe mufokasinga nnyo ku degree. Eri bo bafokasinga nnyo nti byensomye mbijeemu omulimu n'enkola.
We are dreaming of a Uganda where at a young age there is such a relationship between parent and son, parent and daughter, where the daughter can say this is what I want.
Uganda gye twagala empya tesobola kubeerawo nga tewali mateeka. Amateeka agakola.
The Uganda we want